The laughter started before I even put my phone down. Someone in the marketing department had projected the company's internal social feed onto the giant screen in the employee lounge, supposedly to celebrate our platform crossing 10 million active users. Instead, my latest post sat at the very top. Single forever. 3 words. A joke. A harmless response to a trending challenge where everyone pretended to announce dramatic life decisions. The comments exploded. Finally gave up dating? Didn't know our operations director was available. I'll introduce my cousin. Even I laughed when I typed it. Until the notification with the gold verification badge appeared. CEO Evelyn Hart commented. Not approved. I'm your wife. Silence swallowed the room. The laughter died so abruptly that I could hear the air conditioner humming overhead. Someone dropped a coffee mug. It shattered across the marble floor. Every pair of eyes slowly turned toward me. Noah, my assistant whispered, pale as paper. Is this real? I stared at the screen. My thumb hovered over my phone, refusing to move. The comment remained. Not deleted. Not edited. Pinned by thousands of reactions arriving every second. My heartbeat pounded against my ribs. Only 5 people in the world knew the truth. Our lawyer. Our accountant. Evelyn. Me. And the elderly chairman who had insisted the marriage happened 3 years ago. A contract marriage. Completely confidential. No romance. No public acknowledgement. No wedding photos. No rings during business hours. No personal contact unless necessary. The agreement had been simple. She needed stability to secure control of Hart Global after her grandfather stepped down. I needed the resources to save the company my late father had built before creditors swallowed it whole. 3 years. Separate lives. Professional cooperation. Then divorce. Those had been the rules. Rules Evelyn herself had drafted. Cold. Precise. Emotionless. The woman employees secretly called the Ice Queen because nobody had ever seen her smile outside investor meetings. So why? Why would she write something like that? My phone vibrated nonstop. Calls. Messages. News alerts. The company's communication director was calling for the 7th time. The marketing group chat had become complete chaos. Someone had already taken screenshots. Someone else had posted them online. Holy. The CEO? Your wife. This has to be hacked. The elevator doors slid open. Conversation vanished. Every employee instinctively stepped aside. Evelyn Hart walked into the lounge wearing a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than my first car. Her black hair was tied neatly behind her head. Silver earrings caught the overhead lights. She wasn't beautiful in the soft, approachable way magazine covers preferred. She was beautiful like winter. Sharp. Untouchable. Dangerously composed. Her heels clicked against the marble floor. Every sound echoed. Nobody dared breathe. She stopped in front of the shattered coffee mug. Looked at the mess. Then looked at me. Her expression didn't change. Meeting room. Just 2 words. No anger. No explanation. She turned around and walked away. I stood frozen. My assistant nudged my shoulder. You should probably go. I know. My voice sounded strangely distant. As I entered the executive elevator, the doors closed behind us. Only the 2 of us remained. Neither spoke. The digital numbers climbed. 23, 24, 25. The executive floor. She walked ahead without looking back. Inside her office, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the entire city. Rain had started without anyone noticing. Gray clouds swallowed the skyline. She placed her tablet on the desk. Sit. I remained standing. What was that? She met my eyes. My comment. I know what it was. No. Her voice stayed perfectly calm. You asked what happened. I clenched my fists. You broke the agreement. I corrected misinformation. Misinformation? You announced you were single. It was obviously a joke. It stopped being a joke when 32 million people read it. I laughed bitterly. So your solution was exposing our marriage? I exposed nothing. She slid her phone across the desk. The screen displayed hundreds of articles already spreading online. CEO secret marriage? Corporate romance shocks industry. Hart Global refuses comment. My stomach tightened. This is exactly what we were trying to avoid. No. She folded her hands. This is what you were trying to avoid. The words landed harder than they should have. What does that mean? She looked toward the rain outside. For the first time since I had met her 3 years ago. She hesitated. Just for a second. Then someone knocked urgently. CEO Hart. Her secretary's voice trembled. The board members have arrived. Evelyn closed her eyes briefly. They're early. They're demanding an explanation. She stood. So am I. The boardroom looked less like a meeting and more like a courtroom. 12 directors. 3 legal advisors. 2 public relations consultants. Everyone talking over each other. The moment Evelyn entered, every voice stopped. I followed behind her, suddenly feeling like the defendant in a trial I hadn't agreed to attend. Director Collins adjusted his glasses. Care to explain why the company's stock dipped 4% in under an hour? Another director slammed printed screenshots onto the table. What exactly is this? No one waited for an answer. Questions came from every direction. Is the marriage legal? When were shareholders supposed to be informed? Is this a conflict of interest? Were company funds involved? I stayed silent. This wasn't my battlefield. Not yet. Evelyn walked to the head of the table. She didn't sit. There was no misuse of company assets. Her tone remained steady. The marriage is legal. Murmurs spread instantly. It predates my appointment as CEO. Someone gasped. Director Collins frowned. Then why conceal it? Because it had no impact on company governance. One of the older directors laughed without humor. You expect us to believe that? Evelyn's eyes didn't waver. I don't require belief. I require compliance with facts. The room grew colder. Another director turned toward me. Mr. Bennett. His smile looked polite. It wasn't. Did you intentionally manipulate the CEO's public image? Before I could answer, Evelyn spoke. No. He acted independently. I glanced at her. That sentence should have protected me. Instead, it sounded like she was placing an invisible wall between us. Independent. Separate. Exactly as our contract demanded. Then why make that comment? The contradiction gnawed at me. The legal advisor cleared his throat. There is another concern. He projected another screen. A confidential document. Our marriage certificate. Someone had leaked it. The issue date. Witness signatures. Official registration number. Every detail. The room erupted. Impossible. Only sealed archives contain that. This is a criminal leak. I stared at the document. Only a handful of people had access. Our lawyer. Government records. The chairman. Evelyn. Me. None of us would benefit from releasing it. Which meant someone wanted this. Not gossip. Not scandal. Something bigger. While everyone argued, I noticed Evelyn reading the document more carefully than anyone else. Her eyes stopped on the witness section. For the first time all day, real emotion crossed her face. Not panic. Recognition. Someone had altered one page. Very slightly. Almost impossible to notice. A witness signature was different. Not forged. Replaced. She quietly closed the file. I need 10 minutes. Director Collins frowned. We're not finished. I wasn't asking. She walked out. Without thinking, I followed. The hallway was empty except for rain striking the glass windows. Evelyn. She stopped. You saw something. Silence. What changed? Still nothing. Finally, she spoke without turning around. The original certificate had 2 witnesses. I know. It now has 3. A chill ran through me. That's impossible. Exactly. She finally faced me. For the first time in 3 years, the perfectly composed CEO looked unsettled. Someone rewrote our history. Before I could ask another question, her phone rang. She answered immediately. Her expression froze. When? I'm coming. She lowered the phone slowly. The chairman collapsed. My breath caught. Her grandfather. The only man who knew why our marriage had happened in the first place. If anyone could explain who wanted to change our past, it was him. Unless we were already too late. The emergency entrance smelled of disinfectant and rain-soaked clothes. By the time Evelyn and I reached St. Andrew Medical Center, reporters had already gathered outside the gates. Camera flashes reflected off the wet pavement as security hurried us through a private entrance. No one spoke during the elevator ride. Not because there was nothing to say, because both of us understood the same terrifying possibility. If Chairman Theodore Hart died, the only person who knew why our secret marriage had been arranged would disappear with him. The elevator doors opened. An elderly physician was waiting. CEO Hart. How is my grandfather? The doctor's expression remained professional. He regained consciousness briefly. Can I see him? He asked for you. His eyes shifted toward me. And your husband? Evelyn's fingers tightened around the leather strap of her handbag. She nodded once. The intensive care unit was unnaturally quiet. Machines beeped in slow rhythm. Chairman Hart looked far older than he had just a week earlier. His once commanding voice had become little more than a whisper. Still, the moment he saw us standing together, he smiled. So, he coughed. The secret didn't stay buried. No. Evelyn stepped closer. It didn't. He chuckled weakly. I always said secrets grow impatient. I pulled a chair beside his bed. You called us. His tired eyes met mine. Noah, I need answers. So do I. He closed his eyes for a long moment before speaking again. The marriage certificate. You knew? I knew someone would eventually come for it. Evelyn frowned. Who? Instead of answering, the chairman asked a question. Have either of you opened Vault 12? We exchanged confused glances. No, Evelyn answered. You told us never to. I know. His breathing became heavier. Open it. Why? Because. Another violent cough interrupted him. Because your marriage was never the real target. Silence filled the room. I looked at Evelyn. She was staring at her grandfather with an expression I had never seen before. Fear. Not fear for herself. Fear that everything she believed might have been built on a lie. The chairman reached under his blanket with trembling hands. He pulled out a tiny brass key attached to an old leather tag. 12. He placed it into my palm. Trust. He struggled for air. Each other. The heart monitor suddenly accelerated. Doctors rushed inside. Nurse. We're losing pressure. Move. A physician pushed us toward the door. Please wait outside. The ICU doors closed in front of us. Evelyn leaned against the wall. Neither of us spoke. Minutes passed. Then nearly an hour. Finally, the chief physician emerged. The chairman is stable. Relief escaped me before I realized I had been holding my breath. But. Every hospital conversation had a but. He cannot receive visitors again tonight. The doctor left. We remained standing in silence. I looked down at the small brass key. So, I forced a dry smile. Vault 12. Evelyn nodded. It belongs to the old Hart estate. I've never been inside. Neither have I. You own the company. My grandfather owned the secrets. She looked exhausted. More exhausted than angry. More human than I had ever seen her. For 3 years I had mistaken distance for indifference. Now, I wasn't so sure. The Hart estate sat on a hill overlooking the city. Most of the servants had gone home after the chairman's hospitalization. Only the elderly butler remained. He bowed. Miss Evelyn. Then his eyes landed on me. Mr. Bennett. He hesitated. It's good to finally welcome you properly. Properly. The word felt strangely heavy. The butler led us downstairs beneath the mansion. The basement resembled an old archive more than a cellar. Shelves. Locked cabinets. Metal drawers. Dust untouched for decades. At the very end stood a steel door. A bronze plate read, Vault 12. Evelyn inserted the brass key. The mechanism clicked. Nothing happened. It needs 2 keys, the butler quietly said. We both turned toward him. What? He lowered his head. The chairman instructed me years ago. He reached inside his coat. Another brass key, also marked 12. My duty was to wait until both husband and wife arrived together. He handed the second key to Evelyn. You never told us. It wasn't my secret to tell. The keys turned simultaneously. Heavy locks disengaged one after another. The steel door slowly opened. Inside, there were no gold bars. No cash. No priceless paintings. Only shelves filled with neatly labeled boxes. And one wooden case, placed alone on a table. Across its lid were handwritten words. Open together. For several seconds neither of us moved. The room felt untouched by time. Even the dust seemed reluctant to settle on the wooden case. Evelyn rested one hand on the lid. You first. I shook my head. Your family. Our marriage. Her voice softened almost imperceptibly. Together. The word lingered between us. We lifted the lid. Inside lay 3 items. A thick envelope. An old digital recorder. A black leather notebook. The envelope was addressed in the chairman's handwriting. To Noah and Evelyn. My pulse quickened. I opened it carefully. The first page wasn't a letter. It was a photograph. I frowned. It showed me. Not recently. Nearly 10 years younger. Standing outside my father's failing manufacturing plant. Beside me stood Chairman Hart. I looked up. I've never met him before the marriage. Evelyn stared at the picture. So why are you both there? I turned the photograph over. A date was written on the back. 8 years earlier. Impossible. I don't remember this. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. You would remember meeting one of the country's wealthiest businessmen. I would. The room suddenly felt colder. I unfolded the letter. If you are reading this, someone has begun moving pieces before the game is ready to end. I continued reading aloud. Noah, your father refused an offer that would have made him unimaginably wealthy. Evelyn, your parents died believing that refusal was an accident. I stopped. My hands shook slightly. This doesn't make sense. Evelyn silently gestured for me to continue. They were wrong. The next sentence drained every trace of warmth from my body. The same people who destroyed Bennett Industries have been trying to seize Hart Global for over 15 years. I looked up slowly. My father's bankruptcy wasn't just business, Evelyn finished. We exchanged a long look. Our families had never been enemies. They had been fighting the same invisible opponent without knowing it. I reached for the digital recorder. A single file remained. The chairman's voice filled the silent vault. If you're hearing this, I have either failed or run out of time. His breathing sounded healthier. The recording had been made years ago. I arranged your marriage for reasons neither of you would accept if I told you then. Evelyn folded her arms tightly. I know you both believe it was a contract. It wasn't. I frowned. The recording continued. It was protection. Neither of us spoke. There are people who can destroy reputations, governments, and corporations without appearing in public. I couldn't fight them directly anymore. So I chose two stubborn young people who hated depending on anyone. A faint chuckle escaped the recording. You'd make excellent partners. Evelyn rolled her eyes instinctively. Even now, even hearing her grandfather's voice, some habits refused to change. Then his tone became serious again. Someone inside Hart Global has been waiting for my death. Do not trust titles. Do not trust loyalty that appears too eager. And above all, the recording paused briefly. Do not sign any succession documents. It ended. Silence crashed over the room. No dramatic music. No final explanation. Only unanswered questions. I looked toward Evelyn. She had become perfectly still. Succession documents. She whispered the words almost to herself. Then realization spread across her face. My executive assistant. What about him? He scheduled an emergency board meeting tomorrow morning. So, they're asking me to sign temporary authority transfers while grandfather is hospitalized. A chill traveled down my spine. You think that's what they want? I don't think. She met my eyes. I know. Before either of us could say another word, footsteps echoed through the hallway outside the vault. Not the butler's slow pace. Several people. Moving quickly. Someone stopped outside the open door. Then a familiar male voice spoke with calm confidence. There you are. Evelyn's executive assistant smiled pleasantly from the doorway. Behind him stood 3 corporate security officers. His smile never reached his eyes. I've been looking everywhere for both of you. His gaze drifted toward the open wooden case, and the smile slowly disappeared. The silence that followed felt heavier than the steel vault door behind us. Evelyn closed the wooden case without haste. Her face had already returned to its familiar calm. Only I, standing close enough to notice the slight tension in her jaw, knew she was anything but calm. Her executive assistant, Daniel Reeves, folded his hands behind his back. There you are, he repeated pleasantly. The board has been trying to reach you. Evelyn didn't answer. Instead, she asked, how did you know we were here? Daniel smiled. The butler informed the estate office. The elderly butler frowned. I did no such thing. Daniel's smile remained. Perhaps one of the other staff members. There are no other staff members tonight. The butler replied quietly. A flicker crossed Daniel's eyes. Gone in an instant. So, Evelyn said, why are you here? The board meeting has been moved forward. To tonight. Yes. Who authorized that? The directors unanimously agreed. I didn't. You don't need to. For the first time since I'd met him, Daniel sounded less like an assistant and more like someone issuing instructions. The 3 security officers behind him shifted subtly, blocking the hallway. Not aggressively. Deliberately. Evelyn noticed. So did I? She picked up the black leather notebook from the table before closing the case completely. Tell the board I'll attend tomorrow. I'm afraid tomorrow isn't acceptable. His polite mask finally cracked. The company's future cannot wait. The company survived 80 years. Evelyn walked toward him. It can survive one night. Daniel didn't move aside. Neither did the guards. For several long seconds, no one breathed. Then the elderly butler stepped forward with surprising firmness. This is private Hart family property. His voice carried unexpected authority. You have no legal right to block the owner's passage. Daniel studied the old man. then smiled again. Of course. He stepped aside. So long as nothing leaves the vault. Evelyn walked past him without another word. I followed, carrying the wooden case. As we passed, Daniel's eyes settled on me. They say you're a practical man, Mr. Bennett. I try. Then don't let emotions cloud your judgment. What judgment? You'll understand soon enough. His smile returned. It somehow felt colder than Evelyn's had ever been. The rain had stopped by the time we reached the mansion library. The butler locked every door before speaking. They've become bolder. Evelyn looked up. You've suspected Daniel? I've suspected many people. He sighed. Your grandfather instructed me never to accuse anyone without proof. I placed the case on the desk. Then let's find proof. Evelyn opened the black notebook. Unlike the letter, it wasn't filled with explanations. It contained names, dates, company acquisitions, financial transfers. Every page connected different corporations through handwritten arrows. Some companies no longer existed. Others had changed names repeatedly. Yet one logo appeared again and again. A silver falcon. No company name. Just the symbol. I frowned. I've seen this. Evelyn looked at me. Where? I thought carefully. Then remembered. My father's office. What? There was an envelope. I was 12. He burned it after reading. What was on it? The same falcon. The butler's expression darkened. So they truly found you. You know the symbol? He hesitated. I know enough. Evelyn closed the notebook. Then tell us. The old man lowered his eyes. They don't exist officially. They buy companies without buying them. They bankrupt people without appearing in court. They create scandals, replace executives, and inherit everything left behind. They've been doing it for decades. I leaned back slowly. You're talking like they're invisible. They prefer it that way. A knock interrupted us. 3 short knocks. 1 long. The butler relaxed. Our private investigator. A middle-aged woman entered carrying a soaked umbrella. She removed her coat calmly. No introductions. She placed a thick folder on the desk. I've been following Daniel Reeves for 6 months. Evelyn looked surprised. You never told me. Chairman Hart ordered complete secrecy. The investigator opened the folder. Daniel isn't the problem. She slid several photographs across the desk. They are. Each photograph showed Daniel meeting different executives, different cities, different dates, always with the same older man. Gray hair, walking cane, silver falcon lapel pin. No face was ever fully visible. Who is he? I asked. We don't know. But everyone who meets him. She flipped to another page. Either becomes wealthy or disappears. The grandfather clock struck midnight. None of us noticed until its echo faded through the mansion. The investigator spread more documents across the desk. Chairman Hart suspected the organization years ago. Why not expose them? I asked. Because he couldn't prove they existed. She pointed toward the photographs. Every witness changes their story. Every document vanishes. Every financial trail ends legally. They never commit crimes themselves. They convince others to do it. Evelyn remained silent. She wasn't looking at the photographs anymore. She was studying Daniel's employment file. He joined Hart Global 4 years ago. The investigator nodded. Recommended by 3 independent consulting firms. All legitimate. At least on paper. Evelyn turned another page. He received 5 promotions. Each after a senior executive unexpectedly resigned. I looked at her. You think those resignations weren't voluntary? I think coincidence has limits. Her phone vibrated. An unknown number. She ignored it. It rang again. Then again. Finally she answered. This is Evelyn Hart. No one on the other end spoke. Only breathing. Slow. Measured. Then a distorted voice. You opened the vault. The room froze. Evelyn's expression didn't change. Who is this? You should have left the past buried. The call ended. No threats. No demands. Just certainty. The investigator immediately reached for her laptop. I'll trace. No. Evelyn stopped her. They wanted us to answer. So. They know we're moving. Silence followed. I looked out the rain-speckled window. For the first time in years. I wanted to leave. Not because I was afraid. Because none of this belonged to me. 3 years ago, I'd agreed to a business arrangement. Save my father's company. Protect Hart Global's image. Nothing more. Instead, I had inherited invisible enemies. Conspiracies. Secrets stretching back decades. I quietly stood. I think it's time. Evelyn looked at me. For what? For me to leave. The room fell silent. Our contract. I forced myself to continue. It expires in 3 weeks. I'll move out tomorrow. The words surprised even me. But once spoken, they felt right. I'm done sacrificing my life for agreements built on lies. The butler lowered his eyes. The investigator watched without speaking. Evelyn simply stared at me, long enough that I began wondering whether she'd heard me. Finally, she nodded. If that's what you want. No argument. No persuasion. No anger. Just acceptance. Oddly, that hurt more than if she'd tried to stop me. I smiled faintly. I'll continue helping until the chairman recovers. After that, our lives returned to normal. Evelyn looked away. I understand. I picked up my coat. I'll see myself out. As I reached the library door, the investigator's phone rang. She answered immediately. Her face lost all color. Are you certain? She slowly lowered the phone. The emergency board meeting. Evelyn turned. What about it? It already happened. Impossible. They voted while using proxy authority. For what? The investigator swallowed. They unanimously appointed Daniel Reeves as acting executive director. The room fell into stunned silence. But that's illegal, I said. It is. Then how? They used the chairman's digital authorization. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. My grandfather never signed it. The investigator looked directly at her. According to the official records, he signed it 6 hours ago. Everyone in the room knew the truth. 6 hours ago, Chairman Theodore Hart had been unconscious in intensive care. Someone hadn't just rewritten history. Someone was rewriting the present. The sunrise painted the Hart estate in pale gold. No one admired it. We left before dawn. Evelyn drove. I had offered. She refused. Neither of us had slept. The forged authorization weighed heavier than the silence between us. By the time we reached Hart Global Headquarters, television vans had already occupied both sides of the street. Large digital billboards displayed the morning's financial headlines. Hart Global announces interim leadership. Board praises smooth transition. Employees gathered in small groups outside the entrance, whispering nervously. Some looked confused. Others looked relieved. Rumors had spread faster than facts. As soon as Evelyn stepped out of the car, cameras surged forward. CEO Hart, did you resign? Is Daniel Reeves your successor? Is your marriage affecting corporate governance? She ignored every question. I stayed half a step behind her. Not because she needed protection, because I had finally understood something. For 3 years, I had mistaken her silence for strength. Now I knew the truth. Silence was the only shield she had ever been allowed to carry. Inside the lobby, our employee badges flashed red. Access denied. The security guard looked embarrassed. I'm sorry, Ms. Hart. He swallowed hard. My system says your executive privileges have been suspended. My privileges? Yes. He turned the monitor toward us. The authorization code bore the chairman's digital signature, exactly as the investigator had warned. Evelyn studied the screen for only a second. Then she removed her badge and placed it on the reception desk. I won't ask you to break protocol. The guard looked ashamed. I know you won't. She smiled faintly. It was the smallest smile I had ever seen on her face. It wasn't warm. It wasn't bitter. It was simply tired. As we turned to leave, dozens of employees silently watched. No one mocked her. No one celebrated. Yet, no one stepped forward either. Fear had always been the strongest manager. Just as the revolving doors opened, another voice echoed through the lobby. Ms. Hart. An elderly woman from the accounting department hurried toward us. Then another employee joined her. Then another. Within moments, nearly 30 employees stood behind us. The elderly accountant straightened her shoulders. My badge still works. She placed it beside Evelyn's. I'll resign. A young software engineer stepped forward. So will I. Then another. And me. One after another, employee badges landed on the marble counter. No speeches. No applause. Only quiet decisions. Daniel had taken authority. He hadn't earned loyalty. Evelyn's eyes widened slightly. She looked at the growing pile of company badges. I never asked for this. The elderly accountant smiled gently. No, that's why we're here. Across the city, Daniel Reeves watched the security footage from his temporary office. He said nothing. The gray-haired man with the silver falcon pin stood beside him. The chairman chose well. Daniel frowned. What do you mean? He chose people who inspire loyalty. That complicates things. Daniel folded his hands. They've already lost. The older man smiled. Have they? They have no company, no authority, no evidence. The older man walked toward the window. Power borrowed from forged paper rarely survives daylight. Daniel's confidence faltered. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting. The man turned slowly. You underestimated Noah Bennett. For the first time since we'd met him in photographs. His face became visible. I recognized him instantly. Not from business magazines. Not from company records. From a faded photograph in my father's office. Victor Ashford, the investor who had tried to purchase Bennett Industries before it collapsed. The man my father had called the smiling executioner. By noon we were back at the hospital. Not to hide. To verify the impossible. The investigator had already obtained access to the hospital's security records. She replayed the footage frame by frame. Chairman Hart's hospital room remained under constant surveillance. At the exact time the digital authorization had supposedly been signed, the chairman lay unconscious. No visitors. No movement. No signature. The investigator looked up. We have proof. Not yet, Evelyn replied. This proves he didn't sign it. It doesn't prove who did. She was right. Suspicion wasn't evidence. We needed something undeniable. The hospital's chief information officer entered carrying a tablet. Ms. Hart. I checked the authorization request. And it wasn't sent from Hart Global. Everyone in the room looked at him. It originated inside this hospital. The room fell silent. He enlarged a network log. One device. One room. One connection. Not the chairman's suite. Room 1107. Unused. Officially under maintenance. The investigator didn't hesitate. Let's go. The maintenance room was dark. Dust covered the furniture. The hospital records claimed no one had entered for months. The investigator crouched beside a cabinet. Fresh footprints. Someone had been here. Recently. A loose ceiling panel caught my attention. I climbed onto a chair and pushed it aside. A slim black laptop rested inside. Still warm. They left in a hurry, I muttered. The investigator carefully removed it. It's encrypted. Evelyn noticed a small silver emblem on its lid. A falcon. The same symbol. This time, however, whoever had abandoned the laptop hadn't erased everything. One file remained open. Not because they were careless. Because they had been interrupted. The screen displayed dozens of forged digital certificates. Government officials. Corporate executives. Legal representatives. Even judges. Every identity could be copied. Every signature recreated. The investigator exhaled slowly. This, she looked at Evelyn, is enough. The hospital's cybersecurity team copied the entire drive under official supervision. Every file was documented. Every timestamp preserved. By evening, warrants had been issued. Not against Victor. Not yet. Against Daniel Reeves. He was arrested while attempting to leave Hart Global's underground parking garage. The news spread within minutes. Employees gathered outside the building again. This time not in fear. In disbelief. The evening broadcast showed officers escorting Daniel into an unmarked vehicle. Reporters shouted questions. He never answered. The cameras caught only one sentence as he briefly looked toward the crowd. This changes nothing. Hours later, the board of directors assembled again. The atmosphere had completely changed. No accusations. No arrogance. Only unease. Director Collins stood first. He lowered his head toward Evelyn. On behalf of the board, I owe you an apology. Evelyn didn't respond immediately. She placed the copied network logs, surveillance records, and forensic reports on the conference table. You don't owe me an apology. You owe the company the truth. One by one, the directors read the evidence. Faces paled. Hands trembled. Some couldn't even finish the documents. Director Collins slowly removed his voting badge. The resolution appointing Daniel Reeves. He looked around the room. Is hereby declared void. No one objected. The motion passed unanimously. Evelyn's position as CEO was fully restored. Yet she didn't look victorious. As the directors filed out in silence, she remained seated. I approached quietly. It's over. She looked at the empty chair Daniel had occupied. No. Her voice was calm. We removed one piece. She picked up the photograph of Victor Ashford. The man who taught him is still free. Outside the boardroom windows, reporters continued gathering below. None of them realized that the company's greatest enemy had never once appeared on its payroll. And somewhere across the city, Victor Ashford calmly watched the evening news. For the first time in many years, he stopped smiling. The boardroom was finally quiet. Not because the crisis had ended, because everyone had learned how loud the truth could be. Daniel Reeves' arrest sent shockwaves through Hart Global, but the company didn't magically recover. Share prices fluctuated. Investors demanded explanations. Employees questioned years of decisions they had once accepted without hesitation. The damage wasn't measured only in money. It was measured in trust. For the first time since our secret marriage began, I realized something surprising. I no longer felt responsible for fixing everything. That burden had quietly disappeared. The next morning, I packed the last box from the apartment the company had provided us. There wasn't much. A few books, my father's old wristwatch, some clothes, a framed photograph of Bennett Industries before its collapse. I looked around the living room. It had never truly been home. 2 bedrooms, separate schedules, conversations limited to contracts, board meetings, and unavoidable dinners. We had shared an address, not a life. A knock came at the door. Evelyn stood outside. She wasn't dressed for work. Simple black jeans, a light sweater, no assistants, no security, no makeup beyond what little sleep had allowed. I heard you're leaving today. I am. She glanced at the packed boxes. I won't stop you. I know. A faint silence settled between us. I came to return something. She handed me a small velvet box. Inside lay the wedding band I had given her 3 years earlier. Untouched. Almost new. I wore it only when legally necessary, she admitted. I know. She looked down. I don't think I ever thanked you. For what? For keeping every promise. I laughed softly. That was literally the contract. No. She shook her head. It wasn't. You protected my grandfather. You protected the company. You never once used our marriage for personal gain. She hesitated. I noticed. Those 2 words somehow carried more weight than an elaborate apology. I closed the box and handed it back. Keep it. She looked confused. Our agreement isn't officially over yet. For the first time, a genuine smile appeared. Small, quiet, real. I'll keep it safe. 3 days later, Chairman Theodore Hart was transferred out of intensive care. He looked weaker. His eyes hadn't changed. Still sharp. Still impossible to deceive. When he saw me, he chuckled. So, you tried leaving. Evelyn sighed. He already knows. I always know. The chairman motioned for us to sit. I watched the news. You handled yourselves well. You handled us poorly, Evelyn replied. He laughed until coughing interrupted him. Fair. After drinking some water, he became serious. I owe both of you the truth. Neither of us interrupted. I didn't arrange your marriage because I expected you to fall in love. Evelyn looked away awkwardly. I arranged it because I trusted your character. He pointed toward me. Noah refused to abandon his father's employees even after bankruptcy. Then toward Evelyn. You refused to sell Hart Global despite pressure from every investor. He smiled. I needed 2 stubborn people who couldn't be bought. I frowned. You could have simply asked. No. You would have refused. He wasn't wrong. He continued quietly. I never wanted you to become sacrifices. I wanted you to become allies. The room remained silent. For years I'd believed I'd been manipulated. Now, I saw an old man who had been running out of options. Not perfect, not innocent, just desperate. I forgive you, I finally said. Evelyn looked at me. So do I. The chairman closed his eyes in relief. For the first time since this nightmare began, peace entered the room. Over the following weeks, Hart Global changed in ways no press release could capture. Not because policies were rewritten, because people were. Executives who had ignored ethical concerns resigned voluntarily. Middle managers who had remained silent finally spoke. Anonymous reporting systems were expanded. Financial audits became public within the company. Transparency stopped being a slogan. It became habit. I watched it all from a distance. Just as I'd promised. I declined every executive position the board offered. Even Director Collins seemed surprised. You could become Chief Operations Officer. I've already had one corporate life. He frowned. What will you do instead? I looked through the conference room window toward the old Bennett factory visible across the river. I'm going home. 3 months later, the rusted gates of Bennett Industries opened again, not as a manufacturing giant, as a technology workshop and vocational training center. Former employees returned, some with gray hair, some with grandchildren. The old machinists now taught young apprentices. Unused warehouses became classrooms. Machines that had once produced industrial parts now trained the next generation of engineers. Profit wasn't the first priority. Purpose was. On opening day, an elderly worker approached me. He removed his cap. "Your father would have been proud." I couldn't answer immediately. After all these years, those were the words I'd been waiting to hear. That afternoon, a familiar black sedan stopped outside the factory. Evelyn stepped out carrying 2 paper coffee cups. She looked around the renovated building with quiet admiration. "So this is where you disappeared. I warned everyone. They still ask about you." I accepted the coffee. "You shouldn't be here during business hours." I took the afternoon off. "You?" "I was told CEOs are allowed to do that occasionally." I laughed. She did too. It felt strangely natural. We walked slowly through the workshop. Young apprentices greeted me enthusiastically. Several recognized Evelyn from television and nervously bowed. She politely greeted every one of them. No entourage, no executive distance, just another visitor. Near sunset, we stood outside the factory entrance. "You've changed," I said. "So have you." She looked toward the students leaving the building. "I used to think success meant never needing anyone. And now, I think." She paused thoughtfully. "It means choosing the right people." We stood in comfortable silence. No dramatic confession. No promises. No expectations. Only 2 people who had survived the same storm. As she prepared to leave, she held up the small velvet box. I never returned it. I smiled. "I noticed. I'm still keeping it safe." "I know." She got into her car. Before closing the door, she looked back. "Noah." "Yes. Thank you for staying long enough for me to learn how not to stand alone." She drove away before I could answer. I watched the taillights disappear beyond the hill. For the first time in years, the future no longer felt like something to endure. It felt like something worth walking toward. Autumn arrived quietly. The city moved on. Television channels found newer scandals. Financial headlines chased fresher stories. Only those who had lived through the collapse of Hart Global's Boardroom remembered how close the company had come to losing everything. I preferred it that way. Fame was loud. Peace was not. At Bennett Industries, the mornings began with the sound of machines instead of emergency phone calls. Apprentices argued over blueprints. Veteran mechanics corrected them with patient smiles. Every Friday afternoon, I held open workshops for small business owners whose factories had failed. No cameras, no publicity, just practical advice, the kind my father would have given. One rainy evening, my office phone rang. Not my mobile. The old landline hardly anyone knew. "Mr. Bennett?" It was the investigator. Her normally composed voice carried unusual urgency. "We found Victor Ashford." I looked through the office window. Rain streaked across the glass. "Where?" "He isn't running. He requested a meeting." I frowned. "With who?" "With you." The meeting took place in an abandoned conference center overlooking the harbor. Police surveillance remained hidden nearby. The investigator had insisted. Victor Ashford arrived alone. Gray overcoat, silver cane, the same calm smile from every photograph. He looked older than I expected. Not weaker, simply tired. "So," he sat opposite me. "We finally meet properly." "I wish we hadn't." "So do I." His honesty caught me off guard. "You destroyed my father's company. I arranged circumstances. You ruined families. I protected an organization. You forged documents. I delegated." Every answer sounded emotionless. Not proud, not ashamed, merely factual. I stared at him. "Do you ever hear yourself?" He studied me for several seconds. "Every day. And I stopped caring a long time ago." The silence stretched. Finally he asked, "Do you know why your father refused my offer?" "I know he couldn't be bought." Victor shook his head. "No. He refused because he believed every company owed something to the people who built it." His expression softened. I laughed at him. He looked toward the rain outside. I no longer laugh. For the first time, the smiling executioner looked like an old man carrying far too many ghosts. "I didn't ask for this meeting to negotiate." He slid a thick folder across the table. "I came to surrender. I didn't touch it." "Why?" "My organization abandoned me." "What?" "They always do. When someone becomes visible, they become expendable." The investigator silently entered from the adjoining room. She had heard everything. Victor didn't react. Instead, he removed the silver falcon pin from his coat. He placed it on the table. It was never about money. It was about control. He looked directly into my eyes. "And eventually, Control consumes the people who seek it. Police officers entered quietly. Victor stood without resistance. Before leaving, he paused beside me. Your father won. I frowned. He lost everything. Victor smiled sadly. No. He kept becoming the man he chose to be. I forgot how. He allowed the officers to place handcuffs on him. There was no struggle, no dramatic escape, no final threat, only consequences. Exactly as they should be. 6 months later, the courtroom was full. Executives, journalists, former employees, government investigators. Daniel Reeves testified for nearly 7 hours. Every forged document, every manipulated acquisition, every hidden payment, every false promotion, everything connected back to the organization Victor had finally exposed. When the verdict was announced, no one applauded. Justice wasn't entertainment. It was quiet, steady, necessary. Outside the courthouse, reporters rushed toward me. Mr. Bennett, do you consider this revenge? I stopped walking. No. What would you call it? I thought of my father, of Chairman Hart, of the apprentices laughing inside the restored factory. Then I answered, I call it the end of pretending. I walked away before another question could follow. A week later, Chairman Theodore Hart visited Bennett Industries for the first time. He insisted on using a walking cane despite Evelyn repeatedly offering her arm. I'm old. He smiled. Not helpless. The apprentices gathered around him. He spent nearly an hour listening to their ideas. When it was time to leave, he quietly pulled me aside. You've built something better than a company. I had help. He glanced toward Evelyn, who was explaining machinery to a group of students while wearing a borrowed workshop jacket already covered in grease. I noticed. So did she. I followed his gaze. She caught me watching and rolled her eyes. You planning to stand there all afternoon? I might. Then at least make yourself useful. She tossed me a pair of work gloves. I caught them instinctively. The apprentices laughed. The chairman laughed even harder. For a moment, no contracts existed. No conspiracies. No board meetings. Only ordinary people sharing an ordinary afternoon. It felt extraordinary. That evening the last students left. The factory lights gradually dimmed. Evelyn and I stood outside beneath a sky filled with early winter stars. Neither of us hurried to speak. I filed the divorce papers, she finally said. I nodded. I expected that. They're signed. I looked at her. She met my eyes without looking away. 3 years ago we entered a marriage because someone else believed in us. She took the small velvet box from her coat. Inside rested the same wedding band. I'd rather make my own decision this time. She held the box out, not insisting, not pleading, simply offering a choice. I smiled, not because everything had become perfect, because nothing needed to be. I closed the box gently. Then let's not decide tonight. A soft laugh escaped her, still making me wait. I've learned slow decisions last longer. She slipped her hand into mine. Not because a contract required it. Not because a chairman arranged it. Not because the world expected it. Because she wanted to. And because, after everything we had survived, so did I. Far behind us, the restored Bennett factory glowed warmly against the night. Not as a monument to victory, but as proof that broken things could become useful again without pretending they had never been broken. The joke that had changed both our lives had long disappeared beneath millions of newer posts. Yet whenever I remembered those 3 impossible words, not approved, I no longer heard control. I heard someone, awkwardly and imperfectly, refusing to let the right person walk away without first giving the truth a chance. The end.